Hello and welcome to all of our young Padawans. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan,
Hello and greetings.
and we're continuing our KOTOR podcast on our playthrough, our most recent one. And a little information first on Taris, the planet you crash land on. The surface of Taris was once green and magnificent, but the problem is when the planet began to go more industrial and become a full city, to fully become a single city, you kind of had a lot of waste dumped into the oceans, so that most of the animals of the planet died out, and you had the planet that became what it is in the game to an extent. There was a civil war at one point because the lower classes, most of them non-human, were rather upset about being made to starve to death at one point. So they didn't like that. They lost a civil war, and you thus had a lot of criminals forced into the undercity of the planet, with there being hope of a semi-utopia where there is still green and there's still farms that you could create, and there are droid servants to help you and to tend to you, called the Promised Land. And no, before anyone asks, Moses doesn't show up and lead anyone to it. Rather, Rukal later leads everyone to it. That said, the upper city is wealthier, probably more expensive to live in, and generally this place is not a pleasant place for the most part for non-humans, with slurs such as alien and freak tossed around, both of which are very, very unpleasant terms in the Star Wars universe, as calling people beings is more the norm in Star Wars, whereas calling them alien is considered the most ignorant, bigoted thing you could say. This is canon, at least up until around 2007. So, yeah, that's a rough history of the planet and of the history of just the Tarisian people. What's also notable about Taris is that they are a major manufacturing planet, infamous for once having slaves, as in the case of Juhani. And they also make really good ale called Tarisian ale, which is mass produced and often sold throughout the galaxy for quite the price, as is later revealed. Unfortunately for the lower city and chunks of the upper city, Davik, a major crime lord and head of the Black Vulkars, wields incredible influence within the lower city area and throughout a good chunk of Taris. The Hidden Becks, which have a not entirely hidden base, ironic. It's false advertisement there, I guess.
More like the easily found backs.
Are led by a blind guy called Gadden. Gadden is not the brightest bulb in the package. He's very trusting, and he does have a good side to him, although he can be a little manipulative. He's a little complicated as a figure. That said, Karf pulls Revan into a nearby apartment complex, which, you have to check out. There's another one a little distance away. But the main objective in the first part of the story is to just get down to the lower city. Once there, you got 2 apartment complexes to explore. You've got the lower city to get through. You have to be introduced to Mission Veo, a Twi'lek 14-year-old girl who has as a protector Zalbar, a large Wookiee exiled from Kashyyyk. And she knows all the hidden passages and routes within the lower city and undercity. The trouble is, she's not the brightest at times. Let's just be honest, she's not terribly bright. She gets into trouble that otherwise wouldn't be a problem because she has Zalbar to protect her and cover for her. But when they end up coming across some Gamorrean slavers, she runs because she's scared and leaves Zalbar, who, being the parent, did want her to take off because, well, that's basically his surrogate daughter. And so you have to fight your way to him through the Undercity. Now, along the way, you can make light side or dark side decisions regarding people who are infected by the Ragdoll disease, which we chose to do the light side thing. If you choose the dark side thing, nothing really changes too much. You just kill some more people. And anger one lady, I guess. But light side, you end up vowing to help find a cure for the Ragdoll disease. Along the way, we also ran into Canderous Ordo down there, of the clan Ordo. Canderous is a fierce Mandalorian fighter and warrior who has been fighting for what he terms 40 years of the Republic. Well, 40 Republican years. Which suggests that the Mandalorian town people age slightly differently from normal humans. That this true blood Mandalorians are a breed apart from normal regular humans, so that Canderous is not exactly human. He looks it, but from the way he talks about humans and the difference in his biology, and given that he has a slight healing factor, well, slight, a much better one than any humans, and given just a lot of the commentary he makes, he's not human at all. He might be a third or maybe half human, but he's not exactly human. There's something off there, which is interesting. It adds a mystique to him, which is important to the lore surrounding Canderous as a character. He hates Bredjik, Davik's number 2 guy, and thinks of Davik as an idiot, which Davik kind of is. But Canderous is going into the Undercity very reluctantly against his will because Davik wants to scavenge for parts because he's already gotten himself one Jedi slave, so why not try to cash in for more? But it costs him a lot of his men, and Canderous decides, screw it, I'm not sticking around here, it's not worth it. I'm not going to die down here. I can't babysit everyone. That said, the Sith scouting party down there isn't... They're basically looking for recovered Republican officers and whatnot, but they can't find anything. So you end up given the task of tracking down Big Z, not hard to find in some of the sewers, and you then have to fight and slaughter the Gamorrean slavers. There's a problem in the story in that Zalbar swears a life debt to Revan, but why Revan? Karf's the leading officer of the operation, and Mission is technically the one who went to get help for Zalbar, so you could say either she or Karf were the one who freed Zalbar. It's so weird to have Zalbar swearing a life debt. The trouble is that if it's more than one person who saves you, it's not that special in comparison to just one person. For example, if we compare this, like 12 people saving a Wookiee, he's not going to swear a life debt to all of them or to one of them. No. It's considered y'all did something great for him. That's great, but it's not as great if a single individual does something incredibly stupid and brave, going against the grain, going against a group to rescue the Wookiee or the Gungan. You should see episode 1 for a good example of how the life debt works, or Han Solo and Chewbacca's backstory in some of the novels and comics and whatnot, because Han's situation is a lot better an example. Han ends up going against other Imperial officers to save Chewie when they're trying to enslave Chewie and sell him. The thing with Han is, by doing that, he becomes a criminal, and he loses his chance at a commission in the Imperial Navy. Revan doing this, it's not going against the grain. Actually, everybody was saying, Revan, let's go save Zalbar. So that this part makes no sense,
If it
storyline-wise
was-
and lore-wise.
If it was, for example, Bastila was alone and Revan was alone there, and it was Zalbar instead, that would be something where, okay, Zalbar's giving a life debt.
But they don't just give it willy-nilly. That's where that part of the game made a mistake in the writing, but I know people are very attached to KOTOR 1, but that part of the story is dumb, just to be blunt. That said, when it comes to getting the accelerator for the prototype accelerator for the swoop bike, which is what your real end goal is, it's great. Actually, the Black Vulkars having the undercity, the sewer access tunnel guarded by a Rancor is actually pretty smart. Who can get past that? Oh, wait, a Jedi. With a bunch of grenades.
Who'd want to get past that?
Well, someone insane. So, yeah. I really do like that part of this story and of this game. Like, the Rancor thing is actually really good. And it's a good boss because you can't fight it with bronze. You need to fight it with your brain. I really like that. That's smart writing and that's smart game development. The actual Black Vulkar base isn't so bad. Isn't so bad as a level. You basically have to fight through everyone on 2 floors and make your way to the second floor to get to the prototype accelerator. Butchering everyone along the way because it's the thing to do. Then you butcher your way out, hurry over to the hidden backs, where you end up participating in a swoop bike race and meeting up with Bastila and freeing her. Now, we did not level up, so the Bregic part was hard, and we had to basically hide behind Bastila while she does the fighting, which is pretty humorous. But there's an overall goal here with the gameplay. And we do rely on a lot of hand grenades in the fight with Bregic and the Rancor, because, kind of necessary. That said, hand grenades are also going to be coming in handy against Davik and Calo Nord. Calo Nord, for his part, is a bounty hunter who's basically Davik's barking chihuahua. He's not a terribly skilled fighter. He's just a guy who relies on smoke screens and grenades to blind his enemies so that he could shoot them without them firing back. Because when the situation calls for it, he's not a great fighter. He's very easily taken down in the fight with Davik. He's very easily taken down on Kashyyyk. That's usually where we tend to meet up with him. He's just a wuss. He's all bark and no bite. At least that's what I tend to think of him as in terms of a bounty hunter. I always kind of imagine that Candace could have mopped the floor with him solo, but that Candace just didn't care. And that Calo kept goading him and hiding behind Davik. So that Calo Nord is a more cowardly character than what might have been intended, but it adds a layer to him. And the thing is, he got cocky, thinking that, I've got a couple of Sith on my side and a couple of extra skilled Sith guards and whatnot with me, and bounty hunters and slavers to hide behind against Revan on Kashyyyk. Not such a great plan. That said, the information he brings Malak is far more valuable. So Calo Nord plays a very important role in the story. He's the one who tips off Malak that Revan is Revan. So, a very important role there. And I do like Calo Nord as a villain. I just consider him a wuss and a coward. He's just such a fun guy to beat up.
Yes.
That said, with the swoop bike race 1, you basically recruit Bastila. Bastila does not approach things very... She's not happy with the party because, to be quite honest, she's spoiled. She is. We all know it. The other thing that is soon revealed is that she's a poor leader. She cannot lead an operation to save her life. She's a spoiled, probably 19 to 20-year-old girl whom has never led an operation in her life, Previously, as it's revealed in KOTOR 2, she was a tattletale who often tattletold on the Jedi Exile and Revan and Malak, especially when they tried to recruit Jedi for the Mandalorian Wars to save the galaxy. And she went crying to the Jedi Masters. On one hand, you can understand why she would do that because, they've been kicked out of the Order. On the other hand, she was a yes girl for basically some of the most wicked, corrupt people in the galaxy. But she didn't realize she was operating for someone like Vrook. She was thinking, I am obeying the code and the Jedi Masters.
She did what she thought was right.
Which, it's hard to fault her for that one. It's very difficult. I don't think anyone can truly fault her. She was 13 years old when she tattletold. Honestly, in some ways, she was being the responsible one. That aside, her leadership capabilities on Taris, oh boy. She quickly gets scolded by Karv, who takes command, again, because Karv's the natural leader. Karv's a great leader. And Karv basically starts giving her lessons on leadership, because he just says, you don't come in whining, barking, complaining, and whatnot. But a true leader comes in with a plan and will consult with everyone and pick the best parts of everyone's plans and ideas and put together a better idea to an extent, or at least work with whoever has the best idea. And in a way, he's advocating for the style of leadership that Zhou Yu showed in Chinese history in the era of the Three Kingdoms with the Battle of the Red Cliffs, or that, I guess you could say to an extent, Nobunaga used in Nobunaga Oda in Japanese history in regards to his top generals such as Shibata Katsuie, that's the guy's name, one of the guy's names. You have Tokugawa Ieyasu, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Akechi Mitsuhide. These were his top generals, and he often chose the best ideas they could come up with as his game plan, or he'd come up, because he was a genius strategist himself, with the best possible idea. And historically, generals and leaders often did this historically. So that sometimes the best military strategies were simply 5-6 people in a room who were all very smart discussing the best possible idea to counter another guy's idea. And relying on very, very skilled scouts and tactical intel. That aside, the thing with Bastila is she's also keen to kind of start to recruit Revan into the Jedi ways to an extent. She's stunned that Revan had a dream, because Bastila shared the same dream, and Bastila's nervous about Revan getting her memories back. Who could blame her? Revan was a bit of a psycho previously, before the whole memory wipe thing. That said, she's also ends up having a conversation with Karv. Now, Mission's conversation with Karv was about Mission trying to say, well, Taris can't be that bad. And Karv says, no. Like, kudos to you, kid. You survived on one of the worst planets in the galaxy. It's terrible here. And you have Mission, no, there is something good in Taris. You have Karv, no. And let's be honest, there's little to no good in Taris, except for the people in the lower and under cities. They're better people, for the most part. There are some good people around, but in the upper city. But anyways, Bastila shows herself, let's be honest, to be incompetent. No, she's like, oh, my lightsaber must have slipped or rolled under my seat when I was landing on Taris. Honestly, I have never heard of this sort of thing happening to a Jedi. I've never heard of a Jedi screwing up this badly in universe.
And Karv laughing at her?
Yeah, he then tells her, leave this out of your reports in the future. But let's be honest. When does Bastila actually accomplish anything without Revan holding her hand in this game? Now, kudos to Bastila. She did capture Revan. She does have the battle meditation. These are two major qualities of hers. But she's not very good at her job. I like Bastila as a character, but she's not great at what she's trying to do. But what she is skilled at is lightsaber combat and the battle meditation, which, kudos to her, she is good at those things. Now, the next thing you have to do in this part of the game is break into the Sith base, You get in with Candace's help and the help of T3M4, a fun little droid. My favorite droid in universe. And the Sith base is easy. Easy peasy. Except for the one boss at the end who can be a little tricky. That said, you free up a certain Duros. If you're light side, you kill him if you're dark side. It's easy to accidentally kill him. So save right before you do that. And save his butt. Because he's the guy who covered up the corpses for you. Because, well, he was that kind of bro. And his name is...
Duros.
So, obviously a very important figure to remember. Probably dies in the explosions and the bombardments by Malik afterwards. Sad. So, after you get the access codes, you hustle over to Candace's side, and Candace then says, alright, I'll put in a good word for you with Davik. Davik's keen to say okay, and then it's time to bust for his base, butcher everyone in there. That's basically, okay, that's a guard, not the guests or the slaves. And then time to hustle over to the Ebon Hawk, do the usual thing, grocery shopping, birthday party, executing bounty hunters and crime lords, and getting off the planet and escaping a blockade.
Don't forget Grand Theft Spaceship.
No, Grand Theft Auto is what it would be called, even in Star Wars. Grand Theft Auto. Trust me, that's what it'd be called.
Grand Theft Auto. Okay.
Yeah. Which... The trouble with the ship-to-ship battles is that the Ebon Hawk's basically invincible in this game. So, there's no point to that little mini-game. I don't really care for that mini-game. Alright, now we're going to discuss not the story and the lore of the... Oh, and we do have one other thing real quick. You also have the choice of selling the Ragul Cure or providing the Ragul Cure to the doctor who's covering for some Republican officers and then spreading it throughout the Undercity. We chose to do the light side thing because we're going with a light side quest. Because we're playing this also as a prequel to KOTOR 2 because we just want the data for KOTOR 2, the restored edition. That said, Taris is a level that I find goes on for too long. Granted, it is not Telos 4, the first part of Telos 4 of KOTOR 2, where the part where you have to choose between the Ithorians and Zerka in KOTOR 2 feels longer. It's shorter than this part, than Taris, but that's longer. The surface of Telos is way funner because you're fighting your way through everyone and you get to make it to all but Atris's enclave, which then, yeah. But the problem with Taris is it goes on for so long. The prologue of this game is so long. That said, the story has a good reason for why it's so long. Now, like, they do need to establish the characters like a book. You can't just have Revan just, like, go from the Endar Spire to Jedi. That would have made no sense. So it's really long. For those of us who are returning to this game and have played it a million times, it's tedious. But we do understand why it is the way it is. So this part of the game is very important. You're establishing the main cast. And most of the characters you meet are found on Taris. So it plays an integral part of the game story. And so I don't really have any complaints about this part of the game too much. Now, anyone who's seen our comic book videos here and our movie video of other Star Wars stories will know we tend to rate things from a 0 to 4 rating. So we're now going to rate, in terms of just the gameplay and whatnot, the prologue of KOTOR 1. And just as though it were its own game in a way. And we're going to do this for every chapter, so to speak, of KOTOR. Rating each one as though it's its own kind of chapter, part of a novel. Because in some ways, KOTOR 1 and 2 do feel, in some ways, like Jedi Knight and Battlefront 2, like a novel. And this is to the strength and virtues this just speaks to the greatness of the early LucasArts games. So we're gonna rate this. I'm gonna have to admit I will rate this a 2. This is good, not great, but it's a necessary part of the story. They are being very slow, but they're taking their time trying to build up the story. I think that they could have cut down a little on time at a few places, but I do get why they did what they did. And I do like some of the stuff here.
I do find there are some things that drag on.
Okay, so how are you going to rate it?
I suppose a 2. There's a lot of schmucks you could kill.
That's always fun.
You do see quite a bit of lore that can be considered
Kind of important. Because...
Yeah.
Yeah. That said, this is not the funnest mission of the game. The funnest mission is probably Korriban. I love that part of the game.
Yes.
There's so much lore with Korriban. And there's a certain tone and feel to the Korriban mission that I don't think... It's the high point of the game. Like, I don't think any other part of the game really tops Korriban. Like, I really like the Starforge level to an extent. I love how everything comes together on the Starforge. I really like the Leviathan mission. But I just love Korriban. That said, I'm not going to lie. I think my least favorite part of the game is probably either Tatooine or Manon. I'm not terribly fond of those missions. I don't like them. But Kashyyyk I have mixed feelings about. I love Jolie, but it does stretch at times. But Taris is not so bad, I guess. It could be worse. I've seen worse intros to a game. But for a Star Wars intro, it's not great. It could have been better, but it is gripping and good. So you can't really complain about it too much. But that concludes this chapter of this part of the KOTOR game. Stay tuned for next time for Jedi Training, which is going to be pretty fun to cover. And we're going to divide Dantooine into 2 chapters because there's a lot of lore and context to discuss, and we are going to want to discuss everything that we can. So stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Darth Vader using the Force to tear apart his enemies.